Hey guys, it's Mitch. Today we're going to be talking about squat depth. So what is and what is not an appropriate squat depth? When I was going over this discussion in my head, my plan of attack was to sort of kind of get into a little bit of nuance. You know, I love nuance, get into a little bit of nuance, kind of leave the answer hanging. But I think that's unfair. So I'll give you the answer right away, and it's the answer that is always the answer, and it depends. Okay, go type in squat depth on the computer, and you're gonna find thousands and thousands of references from blog posts all the way to scholarly articles. It seems like everyone has an opinion on this. Even more so, I think if you start looking at social media, Instagram, you have anyone who takes a heavy load and squats it to anything above parallel, we immediately write them off. That's not a squat. And I think especially as coaches, it's important that we educate ourselves onto why an individual may or may not be squatting to full depth. So I'll try to chunk this up into different sort of subgroups here, and then at the end we'll kind of tie it all back together into the answer of it depends. So I'll get the negative side of this out of the way first, is that I do believe that there are a lot of individuals who can squat fully to depth, whether that is the Olympic weightlifting ass to grass squat, or whether that's the powerlifting at least to, I'm at that 90 degrees, my knee and my hip crease, right? I believe there are plenty of individuals who can hit one of those two options and simply choose not to because they would rather add more weight to the barbell. And that is not what I'm referring to here. So let's get that out of the way first. If you're an athlete, or if you're a coach who has an athlete who is squatting like that, might be time to bring the weight back down, stop lifting with our ego, and take a different approach. But there is a time and a place, both for performance reasons and for health reasons, why I wouldn't squat to depth. So the first group of individuals is those individuals who physically cannot squat to depth, right? And one of the approaches that I absolutely can't stand is there are a lot of coaches, there's a lot of trainers, there's a certain organization out there that preaches this approach of, well, if you can't do it to full depth, just do it more. And I believe that there is a lot of inherent risk involved in that for someone who physically cannot squat to depth. So we can do an entire different series on how I might go about that, but the short answer is, coach, run an assessment, right? What is the reason, where is the reason why this individual can't squat to depth? From there, run your assessment, figure out what you need to do, train them up, see if that works, see if we're able to get more depth into their squat. With that group of people, it's important as coaches that we ask ourselves why they would need to squat deeper, right? And so maybe I have a geriatric patient who comes in and she can't do a full depth squat. And in my mind, a full depth squat is, let's say it's ass to grass, right? I have an Olympic weightlifting background, and that's just my gold standard. Does my client need to squat absolutely fully all the way to the ground? And the short answer for a lot of us is yes, absolutely, right? Because that is our upbringing, that is how we have been taught, whatever camp we've been in. But the real answer is it depends, right? Is my client's life any worse off if she cannot squat to my standard of depth than if she can only go just above parallel, right? So always kind of question yourself, always check your own biases, always ask, does this client need to be getting to depth, right? Let's talk on the performance side of things. I see a lot of coaches who are hammering home this idea of a full range squat year round. For those of you who have seen kind of other lectures from us, is everything has a season, right? So if we actually start to look at the research, there is a time and a place for a full range squat, and there's a time and a place, depending on the individual, for a partial range squat. And for those full range squat advocates, right, this guy hurts to see athletes loading up a heavy barbell and only coming down about this far and coming back up. But if we look at the research and we start to look at why we're prescribing what we would call a quarter squat or a half squat, is specificity. And so looking at an athlete, we want to go from a GPP, general physical preparedness, right, pushed way out, away from my season, and as I get closer to that season, I want to get more and more specific with my exercises. And so we'll be very specific here. We'll use a sprinter, right? And a sprinter's job is to run faster than everyone else on that track. And I don't need a sprinter to be able to hit a full depth squat preseason and into their season. Why? Because that range of motion does not closely mimic what they're doing as an athlete, right? They're spending most of their time in that stance right here versus here. They are pretty dang similar, right? So I can start with this approach of I need fuller range of motion. And as I get closer to that season, I want to reduce that range of motion because it's going to make them a better athlete, right? And we need to get that out of our head that full range is the only way. We can take this approach of squatting, and I don't have anyone here to demonstrate this, so I hope you can conceptualize this, is let's take this in terms of the box jump. I love this demonstration because everyone loves high box jumps, right? And so what we see in the box jump is we see someone goes from a 20-inch box to a 30 to a 40, and our goal is constantly trying to get higher in that box jump because somewhere along the line we've decided that this is athleticism. When we look at a high box jump, it has less to do with how athletic the individual is, and it has more to do with how flexible they are through their hip flexors, right? If we see someone jumping super high, they're just tucking their bodies up in this nice little cannonball to hoist themselves up, and they always land in this super deep squat at the top, and it's all shaky, and the boxers are about to topple over, and then they jump back, right? Although that's all well and good, and have fun with that all you want, that's general physical preparedness. That is not specific to our sprinter's example, right? Instead, we would want the sprinter to be landing on a box where they're landing in this position, right? They don't need to be worried about the height of the box. We need to be worried about the explosiveness from the ground to the box. And that is going to be seen not just from how they jump, but how they land. So are we seeing how there's a time and a place for a full range versus a partial range? Let's look at on the other end of, for those of us who say I should never do a full range of motion squat, there's a lot of advantages to why I'd want to do full range. Number one, we do know that the fuller of a range of motion, the more hypertrophy, the bigger I'm going to get, right? We also know that there's going to be a tremendous amount of increase in mobility, right? So for a lot of us, we're limited in our time that we have with our athletes. And so if an athlete walks into power train and I happen to be a coach there, and I've got this athlete for 3 hours a week, and I run them through an assessment and I see that they aren't very mobile, I have 3 hours to get them to where they want to be. And a lot of times, especially an athlete, isn't gonna come to me and say, hey, for 3 days a week, I want you to just work on my mobility. That might be a box they want checked off, but they're gonna wanna get stronger, faster, more agile, more explosive, etc. So I could spend 15, 20 minutes of each of their sessions working on mobility drills, or I could just have them get stronger through a fuller range of motion. So now, instead of just going into a quarter squat, I'm having them squat all the way to the floor. I've checked off 2 boxes. I've made them stronger and I've made them more mobile, right? So let's finish up here with what is going on in the non-performance side of things. So what does squat depth have to tell us about health? So again, I think we fall into two camps. I think there's the camp of we should just do partial range squats because anything below that is an increased chance of injury. We have the other group saying that you know, if someone can't squat all the way down to a chair, how are they ever gonna sit, right? I'm gonna step off screen. I'm gonna grab this chair real quick. So I think we need to stop being so silly, right? If I'm someone who says someone who can't fully squat will never be able to sit down to a chair, like, humans are smart. They can push off and grab. Stop assuming that we can't do this, right? So I think we'll make these examples, these extreme examples, to drive home a certain point when that's never the case, right? Just yesterday I read a study. For those of you who are interested, we can add that link to this study down below. But what they did is they took two groups of geriatric individuals and they gave them an at-home exercise program, and it was squat depth. So they had a normal chair, and then they had a chair where they asked the individual to put a pad or a pillow or something that raised up the squat height. So this was either a full range squat or a partial range squat. And what do you think they found? There was no difference in strength between the two groups, right? So what does this mean? It means that we as coaches need to stop pushing a certain depth or a certain standard, and we need to look at the individual, what they're capable of, where they're at in their calendar, in their season, wherever it may be, and we need to write an appropriate program based on their needs, right? So let's tie all of this together. The answer is, and always will be, it depends. We should not have our biases included in that. I like full range of motion squats, but leading up to and during a season, I need to be okay with my athletes squatting to a partial depth. If we're on the other end, we need to let go from this old school ideology that a full range of motion squat will hurt us. It won't. And we need to be able to meet in the middle and say, when should I and when should I not prescribe a certain depth on my squat? So I hope this helps. I also hope that this creates a lot of conversation, whether you want to comment and ask us questions here at Powertrain, or if you and your buddies are sitting around and your coaches are athletes and you want to talk about, you know, did you think this was stupid or not? But I think it's conversations like this that are going to help all of us get better at either programming for our clients, or if you're a client or an athlete, it's going to help you better understand why your coach may or may not be prescribing something. So like always, please like, share, comment down below. I appreciate you guys tuning in, and until next time.